Madam Clerk, are you ready?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Greetings, everyone. It is Thursday, February 1st. This is the regular meeting of the Clearlake City Council. Madam Clerk, could you please do roll?
Councilmember Slotin.
Here.
Councilmember Purdop.
Here.
Councilmember Kramer.
Here.
Vice Mayor Overton.
Here.
And Mayor Claffey.
Here. Councilmember Kramer, could you lead us in the pledge?
I would be honored. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could all remain standing for a moment. I'd just like to take a quick moment of silence. Think about those who are maybe ill or those folks that we've lost recently. Thank you. Item D, adoption of the agenda. City Manager Flora, any changes?
No modifications, Mr. Mayor.
Any changes from the council?
Mayor,
If not,
Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
I'll second that.
I have a motion from Councilmember Kramer, a second from Councilmember Slutin. Please, can all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
All those opposed? The vote is unanimous. All right, moving on to presentations. So the first presentation is a proclamation declaring February 2024 as Black History Month. Whereas the Lake County branch of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People will celebrate a combination of Black History Month and Martin Luther King's birthday as we reflect on the proud legacy of courage and dedication from visionary leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., Roy Wilkins, Rosa Parks, Ketanji Brown, and local community leaders like Sarah Wright, Sarah Anzio, Kenneth Bagby Sr., Greta Zett, Bessie Bell, and Lynette Kirkwood. The NAACP has been at the forefront of protecting our fragile democracy, which is under assault. Voting rights of colored people and refusal to enforce the American with Disabilities Act, the LGBTQ discrimination, women's right to choose, voter suppression, gerrymandering, and urging the passing of the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, which will ensure the protection of civil and voting rights under the United States Constitution. And whereas the NAACP history is one of dedication and struggle to maintain equality and justice for all citizens in the United States, and whereas the local branch, like other NAACP branches throughout the state and country, diligently work on social programs aimed towards the elimination of banning books, rewriting our vast contributions to this great nation, eliminating racial hatred, bigotry, and poverty. And whereas the Lake County branch of the NAACP is led by Rick Mayo, president and 1982 founder of the Lake County branch. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed, the City of Clearlake encourages all citizens to join in celebrating the diversity and character of our community and highlighting the importance of sharing our culture, customs, and traditions with those around us. Signed this day, February 1st, 2024. Mr. Mayor, if you'd join me.
Tess?
So I'd like to present this on behalf of the City of Clearlake.
Thank you.
And then if you'd like to say a few words.
Thank you, members of the council. As always, it's been now close to 35 years that we've been doing this. And this means a lot to our organization. And to my right, to my left is Mrs. Kirkwood, Lynette Kirkwood. She's a member of our board. And to my right is our secretary, Greta Zeet. And so we want to thank you for the proclamation. And also, hopefully, we can be able to unpack a lot of the things that's in this proclamation and dealing with people's rights in the community, the ADA especially, and hopefully sometime this year we'll be able to get that bathroom put in the park over there that I've been speaking about for some time. But I thank you so much for this proclamation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, please.
Go get paper towels. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Mr. Murdoch is getting
All right, thank you. Moving on to presentation number 2, presentation from the Clearlake Police Department's annual report. Chief Hobbs.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. Tonight, I'm going to go over the annual report for the Clearlake Police Department. It'll give you a overview of what we've to enhance trust as we go through. We'll be talking about our mission. Next slide. Some of the areas we're going to cover, which are the main focus of the police department, not necessarily in that order, but personnel, engagement with the community, accountability, and trying to achieve excellence in the work we do. Next slide. Next slide. Numbers for the PD. So these are general statistics for the police department. Calls for service, 21,305, which is down 1,351 from the year prior. Officer initiated incidents up to 13,675, which is up about 35,000. So those are separate categories. They're up to 2,100. Next slide. Citations up a little bit, up to 3,785. And traffic accidents, we were down to 89 this year from the accidents in the city. Those are mainly, on the next slide you saw there's 74 injury crashes. We generally only take injury collisions that result in some type of injury to one of the occupants of the vehicles, so we don't have an exact number of total accidents. We do, however, take some depending on what the circumstances are that are non-injury. Next slide. Traffic enforcement, traffic stops, we were up to 4,212 last year, an increase of almost 1,900. That's a pretty significant amount. Some of that additional work there was a result of one of the positions we had doing some special enforcement in the summer. We'll get to that later on in the presentation, though. Injury collisions, 74, which is down from 79 last year. Fatal injuries were up 2 this year to a total of 6. Major injury crashes were down 5, and minor injury collisions were down 2. Next slide. Response times. These are the response types of priority 1, 2, and 3 calls. Basically, they're categorized depending on the severity of the call, what's going on. Is it an emergency? Is someone at risk to serious bodily harm, injury, death? The priority 1, all those categories, this is the time from the time the dispatcher gets the call to the time the officer arrives on scene. So in there, the dispatcher they'll take the call, they'll enter it into the system, dispatch the officers, then the officers go to the location. So we have some, all priorities are down a decent amount from last year. So hopefully we can keep improvement on those numbers this year and get them down a little lower still. Next slide. This is one we briefly talked a minute ago that had some effect on the traffic enforcement numbers. Fortunately, this year, during the summertime, our staffing was at a good level. We were able to cover all of our regular shifts, all of our investigative positions, and we had a couple cover shifts on regular shifts, and we had 1 extra person that we were able to, basically for the summertime prior to the school year starting, just focus on things in the shopping areas, whether it's on Olympic, Lakeshore, the Dam Road area, focus on the retail areas, focus on enforcement in the parks, and then do extra traffic on the high visibility roads, or roads with a lot of traffic, mainly the highway, Dam Road, Lakeshore Drive, Olympic, Old Highway 53, to just kind of focus on those areas and work on speed enforcement and other violations. Next slide. Next, we're going to go into code enforcement numbers. Code enforcement, property cases down to 575, just a little bit down from last year. Vegetation cases up to 1,340, a pretty big increase of 535. Just trying to do some extra out there and make sure we have properties that have weeds and vegetation under control to try and mitigate some of the fire risk during the fire season. Cannabis cases up a little bit to 43. Admin citations up to just over 2,700. Next slide. Parking citations down 153. Vehicle cases down 177 to 261. Some of these categories, the vehicles, obviously we work pretty hard on taking care of the vehicles and getting them abated by the owners versus the city abating themselves, which is pretty costly. Ultimately, in these areas, though, a lot of what we can do depends on the amount of vehicles that we're abating, whether it's RVs or automobiles. For example, some of the RVs we've been having to abate the last couple months. For the price of one of those, we can abate about 16 in the last 2 RVs that we've had to abate. We could have it puts a damper on the ability to do cases in other homes that we have to deal with. The last couple of years, cars, trucks, SUVs. Code enforcement 350 from last year. Next slide, please. Voluntary compliance. So of the 2,200 cases they did this year or last year, 1,411 of the cases the owners voluntarily abated the issue, whether it was weed abatement, garbage debris at a residence, or whether it was a vehicle. Those are ones that were abated by them. So it's about 65% compliance rate of owners that took care of the work based on code enforcement contacting them, sending them a notice of violation. Some of the cases, they did receive citations, but ultimately, they abated the nuisance before the city had to do it. Next slide. Want to move on to training. Next slide, please. On the police officer dispatcher side of things, the California Post approved training, right around 1,600 hours of total training, 78 different courses. Courses range for perishable skills items that are mandatory items. Officers have to do 24 hours of perishable skill training every 2 years, and then an additional 24 hours of non-perishable skills training. The perishable skills consist of things like EVOC, driving, firearms, use of force, defensive tactics, racial profiling, tactical communications. And then there are a lot of other advanced officer courses for things related to doing different investigations, whether it's detectives doing their investigations, or DUI enforcement, or enforcement of other related crimes to alcohol and drugs. We did active shooter training again this year. We hadn't done it for about 2 years. We're trying to do it every 2 years on a cycle with the county and Lakeport. So a majority of the department, even the ones that had done the training 2 years prior, redid the active shooter training just to make sure everyone is updated in that type of training. So in the event of needing to be respond to one of those things, the people have the most current training in that area. Next slide, please. Non-post training, 782 hours, 56 different courses, just a list of different things. Massive forfeiture, Casio, which is the Code Enforcement Association. They put on numerous trainings that are required for code enforcement officers to complete on a biannual basis. Evidence collection courses. We did participated in the high performance organization training with most of the City Hall and Public Works in the spring. Then there was 4 members of our department that did the extensive course of the high performance organization, the leading edge training. Did that later on in the summer and the fall. We had canine training, and then we had several officers attend intermediate collision investigation training. Next slide, please. Move on to the personnel side. Oh, if you could go back one, please. That's just, that there is a photo of the employee, picnic we had in the springtime. Was a really good event from the police department's perspective. It was definitely good. We've done a lot of events over the years for Christmas, different events, and we haven't always had the best turnout. This event we had all but a couple members of the entire police department show up at this event, which I think is really positive to show that people are being engaged in their work and want to participate in these things that we've generally not had the best participation in before. So it was definitely a good turnout for us. Next slide. Service recognition. During 2023, these are the people that received service recognition awards for their years of service. 15 years, Lieutenant Ryan Peterson. 10 years, Sergeant Trevor Franklin. 5 years, Code Enforcement Technician Jan Brzeska. 5 years, Officer Daniel Eagle, Dispatcher Taylor Eagle, Code Enforcement Officer Garrett Copus, and Officer Stephen Diaz. Next slide, please. Officer recruitment. For 2023, 19 applicants. Of those 19, 3 went into background. Of those 3, 1 was hired. That's Officer Yang, who we hired in, I believe, the first week of July of last year. Next slide, please. Police trainee recruitment. We opened that up again last year to try and get some local candidates and people that would be more than likely stay in the community longer after working here, not hire someone from an outside area that's going to move and go back to where they're from after they get a couple years of experience. So we did recruitment for that. We did 2 different recruitments. Ultimately had 21 applicants, and we had 2 people go into background. 2 were actually hired, just not last year. We hired the 2 that were in background on January 2nd of this year. They are currently in the College of the Siskiyous Police Academy with an anticipated graduation date of mid-June. So assuming everything goes well there, they will graduate the academy mid-June, and then roughly the Monday after 4th of July, they will start on the field training officer program. Next slide. Dispatch recruitment. We had a lot of dispatch applicants, 124. 3 made it into background, 0 hired in that year. This one again, one of those people in background is almost done with the hiring process now. So if the last 2 steps of the process, the psychological and the medical, go well, that person should be starting shortly. This is another difficult one. We get a lot of applicants for this. Majority of the people that apply do not show up at the written test they have to take, the post-dispatch test. It's a pretty difficult test. And so most do not show up at it. Of the ones that show up at it, unfortunately, probably about 15 to 20% pass the test. So then we have that 15 or 20% that pass the test that we can interview and hopefully get to background. So definitely difficult on the recruitment there. Fortunately, though, we only have 1 vacancy at the moment. So if everything goes well with the one that's in the process, we won't need anyone else for the time being. Next slide. Promotions. During 2023, we had 3 promotions. Sergeant Ryan Peterson was promoted to lieutenant. Detective Trevor Franklin was promoted to sergeant, and dispatcher Chelsea Banks was promoted to records and communications supervisor. Next slide. I was going to go over a couple awards here real quick. This is Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Officer Eagle received this award in 2023 for the amount of DUIs he did in the preceding calendar year. He did a lot of training in this area and then focus on this DUI enforcement around. Next slide. You can go back one. I had one more in here, but I was having difficulty with it a minute ago, and it is not showing up. There's another photo. It's going to have Officer Eagle on that one and Congressman Mike Thompson, which we recently had the presentation on at a couple council meetings ago. That was a Public Safety Hero Award from Mike Thompson to Officer Eagle for his work that he has done in the year. Some of the specific things in that were his DUI enforcement, getting the MAD award, the work he's done with his K-9, and various other traffic and collision-related projects he's worked on during the year. Next slide. We did Employee of the Year awards in 2023. That was at the summer picnic event. The Employee of the Year awards we do them for volunteer. We do one for sworn personnel and one for non-sworn personnel. The Volunteer of the Year it was Mike Mello on the left there. And the non-sworn Employee of the Year is Taylor Eagle. She's the one on the right in the dress. And then the sworn Employee of the Year is Officer Stephen Diaz. He is just to the left of the dispatcher in the dress. Next slide. We're just going to go over a couple slides now or it's probably more than a couple, but there's a decent amount of just community engagement slides, just photos of us at different events. Or we might not be in all the photos, but just some of the events we went to during the year to try and get officers, employees, dispatchers went to some, code enforcement went to a good amount also. Just trying to engage with the community, go to these events and meet people, talk to people, hear what some of their concerns are, find ways or listen to ways they think we can improve in certain areas. So if you could just go to the next slide, we'll briefly go over a couple more things before those slides, sorry. You can go forward. So I want to go over Q-HIT briefly. We've talked about this one many years before. This is just kind of way to try and measure and and get out there and have some communication with the public. It's surveys that go out randomly to anyone that calls us regarding an incident. If they report something that results in an incident being created in our CAD system, randomly, people get these text messages. There's thousands of them that go out every year. Just sends a quick message to the person that an officer's been dispatched is on the way, and then at several hours, some of them are 12 hours later, they'll get an email asking to rate the officer or the dispatcher on the call. Majority of these we get, over 90% of the ones we get back from people have positive comments and ratings from the people. Not all of the people we send them to rate them, but of the ones that return, I take correction on that. 90% of the ones we send out, we get positive feedback on. About 10% we don't either hear back from the person or we get negative feedback. On the bottom right, there's just a response I've sent out to a lot of people. That was one specific one. Oftentimes we'll have people that will give us a low rating, say the officers didn't respond or it took them a long time period to respond. This one I texted back to the person after getting their survey. It says, responding to survey from yesterday and reviewing the incident log, the response time by the officer was 2 minutes and 54 seconds. In that particular one, they had claimed that they'd waited half an hour. The officer never came, but the officer had actually gone out there. We get a lot like that, and we try and respond to those. And sometimes people respond back to us. Sometimes they respond back to us and they're angry and they don't believe the response. But oftentimes we're able to have good communication with the person and get them to understand what occurred or why they might not have had contact with the officer or various things. Next slide. This is just a sample. These are the last on the log from the most recent surveys that had gone out. A lot of them are typical responses like this. Some people talk a little bit longer, and to solicit the feedback from people of the positive, but they grow in ways they think we could improve something. All these things are pass down the chain and get back the ones that require feedback that handle that incident, whether it was the officer or the dispatcher, so we can try and improve on ways that we can in the event someone gives us the feedback and we can do something with it. Next slide. It's a couple of this was the POMO walking school bus event that was held last year. That we participated in. Road closures. Next slide. Okay, the Canoctown Unified School District. 4th of July. Next slide. National Night Out. We had another successful National Night Out that donated from different local businesses. We had the event in Austin Park over by the basketball. We had and shortly into the event we had to, I think ultimately there was around that event, but it was a really positive event. A lot of kids, and we were able to communicate about issues they may be having in their neighborhoods, but it was a really and some other agencies, some employees from Lake County Victim Witness Resource Center, the domestic violence with another big thing for this year. This was shortly after the school year opened, but the biggest part of this due to staffing, we were able to put in school district. So at the start of this school year, it's a really positive thing for us to get someone in there full-time that can focus on to know the kids a lot better. Schools and the staff to not have to respond to these incidents at the schools, which they don't have the similar training to as the school. He did win both these matches. Next slide. Another event we attended. Every year, they purchase other people's, I think some city hall families that have been families that are in need of food, and I'm not sure on the number, it was 65, I think. It was definitely a positive event. The flag lowering and the racing, we go to both of those. Another big one this year, the funds that the were substantially up from roughly 200 kids at it, and there was enough money for each child to spend $250 during the shopping trip. Next slide. It's another event, the Victim Witness Christmas Toy Giveaway. We participate in that every year, and that one, there's Christmas toys for about 15 families in Clearlake this year that were passed out. Next slide. And the participating in and outfitting some of our vehicles. The trailer's being towed by one of our and our command posts with lights and a tree, and then in addition, this year we were able to get a couple dispatchers to come along. It's hard to tell there, but they have a dispatch station set up there on that table. Next slide. We're at the end, so if anyone has any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you so much, Chief. Councilmember Slutin.
I saw that you had 2 fatalities. I assume those were the ones on 53.
No, that was 2 more than last year. We had 4 last year. We had 4 in 2022, 6 in 2023.
And those were they mostly on Highway 53?
3 of them were on the highway.
They were the ones who were pedestrian vehicle?
Yes, they all were.
Question, Chief. Point is the response time clock started?
Is when the dispatcher takes the call, they immediately enter it into the put the address in. It starts the timer. Calls that come in from 911. 911 calls, those are auto created. The dispatcher sits there or whatever, it's going to create and start the timer right then. The priority, if someone, the kind of problem with it is, in reality, if it's an actual true emergency, they're going to be quicker response times than those in the priority 1. But priority 1, so let's say for like a stabbing, an assault with a deadly weapon, the system does not differentiate between a cold one of those or an active one. So let's say someone calls, they report a stabbing, they're in the hospital being treated. We're obviously not going to respond to that like we would one that's in progress. So the times, like I said, aren't aren't accurate to a priority one that is an actual emergency in progress. It factors in those ones that might have a little slower response.
Thank you. And then my final question is, what was Officer Perry's record? You said he won those two, but I imagine he had a lot of matches.
Yeah, I don't know. I got those photos, and on the one, on the right, I assumed he won that one. I called him to verify on the second one if he won that one, and
I think we need a
he
sworn
said that the
testimony.
gentleman wasn't quite as strong as it looks like he is based on the size of his arm.
Thank you, Chief. Please thank everyone in the department. You're doing a wonderful job for the city, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
If I could just add, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I think, we're all proud of the work the police department does. They're always there. They, I can attest to the fact that they're always looking to improve everything. Really proud of that. There's always something a little bit better we can do. You see the level of community engagement from them, which is crucial to all the reductions in statistics that we're seeing, the outcomes there. Just really proud of it. And, I also wanted to just, you see this, glossy presentation, but behind all this, I mean, there was a change in how crime statistics were reported over the last couple of years, and Chief Hobbs has spent an extraordinary amount of time and energy in sorting through all that and trying to make sure that those statistics are relatable year to year. And so I just, want to thank him for all of his efforts.
Thank you, City Manager. All right, moving on to public comment. This is the time for any member of the public to address the City Council on any matter that is not on the agenda, that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. The Brown Act, with limited exceptions, does not allow the council or staff to discuss the issues brought forth under public comment. We have one up. You can kick us off. Please just state your first and last name and your town of residence. Right up to the microphone here.
My name is Christina Tapia, and I live in Clearlake. I just want to say you guys do a good job at the police department, but you should get together with animal control and have some kind of fundraiser to get a bigger shelter. That is the major problem in Clearlake. I mean, I don't know if you guys see it at Walmart all the time, but it is an issue. And the homeless people need help fixing their dogs so there's no overpopulation, like, at Walmart, on Dam Road. And it's terrifying and it's sad. And that's all I gotta say.
Thank
Just
you.
think about it, because
Christine. Would anyone else like to make a public comment? Please come forward.
Hello.
I'm here tonight, my name is Jean Yanich, in case anybody doesn't know that. I'm here tonight to bring a few things to your attention. While at Walmart this morning, I encountered a black mother dog with a rope hanging from her neck with her two puppies. These dogs have been roaming the parking lot for weeks. I proceeded to North Bay Animal Shelter, where I spoke to Alyssa and two other employees. I was told they were aware of the dogs but would not pick them up because the shelter was full. Shelter's not full. But anyway, why is North Bay refusing to pick up these dogs? They are contracted by the city to pick up stray dogs. Last year, North Bay promised the city they would put someone in charge for our local shelter. That has not happened and probably won't happen. There was a group put together last year to advocate for the animals. That has been put on hold with no communication as to future meetings. I also want to mention I had a Meal on Wheels senior reach out to me wanting to adopt a medium senior dog. I went to North Bay, the staff dismissed me, and they told me they don't have a dog that would fit that description. I have never been contacted with any possibilities for an adoptable dog. Are citations being written? Is the city planning on buckling down on irresponsible pet owners, enforcing spay and neuter, shots, and licensing? Nothing has changed or gotten better. I hope the council would address these issues that have continued to deteriorate. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to make a public comment?
Yes, Marietta O'Connor. I guess I've been here before.
Where do you,
Oh, I live in Clearlake. Months ago, in come that came and rode up my street. I feel that I pay taxes just like every street paved all the way. Why just patch that street? I don't think it's fair to just have one street patched. Other streets has been done all the way, and I get patched round by the church. I think these two guys have rode up my street and seen the big holes before.
Well, we can't comment, but City Manager, if you want to give just a bit of a summary.
Well, streets at the the city I don't know off the top of my head that Huron is on the list for this year, but we will, continue to perform maintenance there, and, certainly our hope is to get to all of the streets that need maintenance, so.
Yeah, but the more they keep patching them, the holes keep coming back. The people that goes up and down that street, they act like they're on a racetrack. I understand. So, I hope something gets done.
Thank you, ma'am. Would anyone else like to make a comment?
Hi, my name is Evelyn Gonzalez, and I live in Clearlake. Me and my husband retired about 5 years ago, and we love it up here. We used to go camping some years ago, and it was all nice and beautiful, and it seemed like it's kind of gone downhill a little bit, and then the algae on the lake, are they going to ever clear?
I believe your supervisor is in the back hiding, but.
You can't clear it out.
So,
I mean, I don't think you're going to get a very good answer to that here today. I mean, curing the algae in the lake is a very complex issue. We could talk at another time about some of the efforts, hopefully, that the county is undertaking to improve things, particularly here in Clearlake this year. So we're really hoping that that makes an impact. But I'd be happy to meet with you at another time and talk a little bit more detail about it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we used to go camping here, and now we live here, and we love it up here, but I was like, why all of a sudden it kind of went downhill a little bit? I mean, it's always been beautiful.
Yeah, the algae problem has been happening for a very long time.
Okay, thank you.
thank you, ma'am. Would anyone else like to make a comment? All right, seeing none in the chamber, let's go to Zoom. If you're on Zoom, please raise your hand. We need your first, last name, and town of residence. Madam Clerk, are there any hands raised?
There are no hands raised on the Zoom, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right, we'll bring it back and close public comment and move on to the consent agenda. Are there any items that the council would like to pull? Hearing none. Are there any comments from the public? Seeing none, I'll take a motion.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted, Mr. Mayor.
I have a motion by Councilmember Purdock, second by Councilmember Kramer. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Council is unanimous. Moving on to item 5, authorization of an amendment to purchase contract with National Food Equipment for the installation of a freezer as part of the Senior Center kitchen remodel. Sorry, item 6. Public Works Director.
I'm actually going to
All right,
take a
City
stab
Manager.
at that one first. This is normally something that would just be on the consent calendar. I thought the council may have some questions about this because it's a little bit of an unusual situation. So, as you know, we're working on a remodel project for the senior center, and the overall remodel project did not include the purchase and installation of the walk-in freezer and refrigerator. Because of some timing issues, we went ahead and purchased that directly. And the installation was not included in that initial purchase. Our plan was to essentially do a change order and roll that into the general contractor's contract. However, they came back and wanted to charge an additional like 15% on top of this, which we didn't think was necessary because they didn't need to do any work. And I mean, we already paid for the thing. And so it took a little bit of maneuvering because of this is CDBG funding through HCD. In order to make this work, we decided just to pull that back and then come back to the council and ask for an increase in that initial purchase order, really, for the installation costs. And so the $33,000 is not new money. It was initially approved by the council as part of the overall general contractor's amount that was authorized. So I just wanted to point that out. That amount would be reduced by the $33,000 and transferred into this separate contract. So, kind of getting into the weeds on this one, but I just wanted to try and explain that so the council understood what was going on.
Thank you, City Manager. Any questions from the council? Any questions from the public? Madam Clerk, any questions on Zoom or any hands raised?
There are no hands raised on the Zoom.
All right, I'm
Mr.
bringing it
Mayor?
back to council.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the authorization of an amendment of purchase contract with National Food Equipment for installation of a freezer as part of the Senior Center kitchen remodel project.
I'll second that.
Doesn't have the amount, in the amount of $33,000.
We have a motion from Councilmember Kramer, a second from Councilmember Slutin. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to item 7, consideration of continuation of allowing virtual public comment at City Council, Planning Commission, and other Brown Act meetings. City Manager Flora.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. So I'm sure you all recall the comments that we received at the last council meeting during public comment, some of which were quite inappropriate. And so we thought that it was worth coming back to the council and having a discussion about whether you want to continue allowing public comment through this channel. So, the Brown Act was amended via order of the governor through COVID and was something that, we didn't use before that, but we've all become quite accustomed to, and it's quite convenient for a number of folks. But, we certainly don't want to hear the type of comments we heard at the last meeting on a regular basis. So, there is, the emergency orders have been pulled back. At one time, it was, required that you provided that. Is no longer the case. As I believe you all know, the governing board members, the council members themselves were allowed to participate in meetings via Zoom or video conference. That's also no longer the case except for in very specific circumstances. And it kind of goes back to the old rules where, if you're in a hotel room at a conference and you Zoom from there, Not only does there really have to be some medical reason, you have to post the agenda outside your door, and our agenda here has to have the address on it and so forth. You know, what we're talking about here isn't really related to that, but just is it still appropriate for the public to be able to provide comment through that channel? And so just hoping to have a discussion about that. I do want to turn it over to City Clerk Swanson. Over the past 6 months, probably more so, but a number of jurisdictions across California have eliminated the Zoom or teleconferencing option. And there was a recent survey that was done by, I believe, a city clerks group, and Ms. Swanson has some information for that. Thought we would share, and then, you know, see what the council wants to do moving forward.
Right. Honorable Mayor and council members, as City Manager Flora stated, there were some provisions of the Brown Act which were suspended during COVID, which would allow remote electronic meetings. And your city council began streaming live via Zoom in August of 2020. So we currently have norms and procedures of the council that was amended in 2023, which allows for web streaming and simulcast of meetings on the PEG channel, which we currently do. We web stream live on our YouTube channel, as well as the PEG channel also simulcasts the meetings there. So AB 2449 was effective February 18th of last year, and says that if a council member is teleconferencing in, you must have a two-way audio-visual platform such as Zoom or a two-way telephonic service and live webcasting of the meeting, and the agenda must identify an opportunity for the public to participate via a call-in option, an internet-based option, and in person at the location of the meeting. So if we know ahead of time, as it states, that a council member would need to teleconference in, for example, if you're at a conference, then we would have to have a platform such as Zoom available at the meeting. So going back, I did a little bit of research on our Zoom participants. And I went back to last June, and as you can see, Zoom participants throughout for the City Council regular meetings are fairly low, and lower is our Zoom participants who actually comment. We had, it varies, but we have anywhere from 1 to 0, and sometimes that's a presenter. So as you can see, dating back to June, the highest amount in Zoom attendance, minus the staff, was actually at the January 18th meeting, where we actually could identify 2 of those participants who commented as Zoom bombers. So, as City Manager Flora stated, recent California City Clerks poll asked if Zoom participation was still allowed at various agencies, and of the 70 agencies, and that includes school districts, special districts, cities, counties, 70 agencies, 50 of them reported Zoom bombing, and it's not just in California, it is throughout the United States. Once Zoom came on, many agencies report Zoom bombing. 42 of those responding cities and agencies either no longer allow Zoom participation because of the Zoom bombs, or allow it in a very limited manner for presenters and staff. And at the time of the poll, 4 were considering discontinuing Zoom comments. So that's what I have to share with your council tonight.
Thank you, City Clerk. Any other comments, City Manager?
I was going to add one thing. So we work with a number of jurisdictions in our firm, and I would say a lot of them have scaled back the Zooming because of these issues with bombers. So I would say, I like what City Clerk Swanson had to say. She's letting you know what others are doing, but I've seen it in practice, and it works fine. What I have heard is people who say, well, I can't physically attend the meeting, how can I still get my message to the council? And nothing precludes them from emailing or submitting a written comment to the city clerk to potentially even read in advance. That way they're still participating even if they can't physically be here. So just something to consider.
All right, any questions of city staff?
Just one other kind of follow-up to that. I mean, obviously we still use Zoom a lot. We use Zoom to directly live stream to YouTube. We would want to continue making sure that the live YouTube stream is available. It's a very convenient way for us to have a recording of the meeting, because that automatically happens. We think, if the council does want to discontinue use, we'd like to still reserve it for, some consultants and things, which is sometimes difficult to schedule. And so we would, change our Zoom code, and then just not share it publicly, and we would share with specific people that we knew weren't going to be doing bombing. So, it's obviously entirely up to the council on how to go with this. I mean, continuing to do what we've done, it's not really extra work for staff or anything like that. It does certainly provide some convenience in some circumstances. You can see that it's not utilized a lot anymore. But anyway, just, wanted to kind of be proactive and see what the council wanted to do, so we don't hopefully continue what happened at the last meeting. So,
Thank you, City Manager. Any questions for staff? Vice Mayor Overton.
Okay. Could we do, because I kind of like the Zoom and that some people that can't come here do have the right, can see what's going on, and if they wanted to participate, they can. Is there a way we can do, instead of voice, that they can just do the chat room? Like, they can send the chat and Melissa could read it, or city clerk, whichever, could read it then, and then if it's not appropriate, would she have to still read it? Or could she say if she has an inappropriate chat that's like a Zoom bomber or whatever they want to call them?
I don't know of any reason why that would be precluded. I don't know if that's a common practice. I guess I hadn't really thought about doing that personally. Do we even have chat enabled currently on our Zoom? We
No,
do
we-
use Zoom Webinar instead of the regular Zoom because it gives us more control over participants than the regular Zoom. So, that already helps, but I don't think we even have chat enabled. Perhaps we could add it. I'm not 100% sure on that.
I haven't looked into that option, but we could certainly look into it.
I use the chat a lot because I don't have all the fancy stuff on my old computer at work. So I use the chat because I don't have that connection, and it seems to work really well. So maybe that's something we can look into, because then they could still participate, and then we can also monitor if it's going to be a Zoom bomber. We don't have to accept that. So we could watch the language and stuff that way.
Yeah, you'd probably read the parts that are not profane,
Right.
and that would be, we have to honor their First Amendment rights.
Right, you could still read it, but you would be able to watch what's.
Yeah, we'd want to be
appropriate.
careful that, we weren't putting staff in a position where it seemed like we were censoring people out or something.
Well, that's the reason why I was saying is that, would that be like, okay, you're going to read something, but there's an inappropriate something in what they sent in the chat. She wouldn't have to say that. She can say, it's inappropriate to say this, and just leave that word out or whatever. To me,
It would have to clearly be inappropriate. We would, if it's profanity or vulgar or something, we would cut it out.
Councilmember Sutton.
I'm somewhat have a conflict with either deleting it all or keeping it going the way it is. We're doing a people's business, so we have to be as open as we possibly could be. So I'm not in favor of shutting it down after one incident or that happened last week or last council meeting. So I like to see, if this was the only time it ever happened, as far as I know, in the last 6 years, 5 years. So
Well, we haven't been doing it for 5 years, but
No,
yeah.
But if we did the chat, then see, they'd
Yeah,
still be
that-
able to
that would be-
respond. If we could hook the chat up, it just wouldn't be live, but like you said, we've had very few, one person maybe a meeting, and so it wouldn't be that much for Melissa to read, you know.
Is your microphone?
Sorry. So anyway, it's just been one or two people a meeting that's been using it anyway, so if they just typed in, if we could fix the chat where they can just type it in and then Melissa could just read their response, you know, with their comment, so.
All right, still in question phase. Councilmember Kramer, any questions?
Yeah, I like what Councilwoman Overton's thought is on this. I've got to tell you, I never, ever want to hear what we heard last week on Zoom again. That was, it was obscene and beyond totally inappropriate as far as I'm concerned. And my first thought is to eliminate Zoom except for with presenters and others. But to be able to, if there's a way to intercept those messages in chat and just leave in those parts that are appropriate, I'm okay with that. But I have no problem whatsoever with doing away with Zoom, whether it's only the two that we had last week, or I think there was one other one you showed on your thing, but one is too many. So if it comes to that, I'd like to see the Zoom go away with the exception of presenters that we invite.
Councilmember Purduck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a really touchy subject. I wholly support our First Amendment rights, and I want to hear from anyone who has something of a, whatever their issue is, they should have the opportunity to bring it to the council, even if it is ugly, even if it is something we don't care to hear about. They have that right to share it with us, with the exception of profanity or pornographic material. My concern with, and I'd like to kind of actually add to maybe Council Member Overton's thought, if someone would like to, on this forum, we ask that people provide their name, their address, phone number, and contact information. And my thought was, if they're going to make a comment using Zoom or Teams or some other virtual means to make their public comment, that they could register who they are. My concern after our last council meeting was the anonymity that Zoom affords to someone speaking. They could be in a completely different county, completely different state, different country, and we wouldn't know. I did receive a couple of calls and complaints from people who were listening in to our January 18th meeting, and they were very offended by the comments. But that's part of the great thing about living here is people can make their comments whether we agree with them or not. So I would just like to maybe offer the suggestion of more control along the lines of Councilmember Overton, that we would know that it might take away that anonymity, and just as we require of people here in front of us. Initially, I was feeling much like Councilmember Kramer, that it was inappropriate and should be shut down, but again, recognizing and feeling the responsibility to allow people to speak, that was holding me back. But those are my comments. So I think if we can restrict it, if we can have people register prior to making comments, as we require here in this chamber, then I would support continuing it. If that can't be done, then I think we should restrict it, because there are even more egregious examples of this happening in other, I understand, the courtroom and in other meetings that these, and I'd never heard of Zoom bomb, but that's, I guess, what's appropriate, Zoom bombing meetings. And obviously we had 9 people where that was one of the higher numbers of people on Zoom. I think just to kind of see what would happen and what our reaction would be. And I want to congratulate the council. I thought we handled it very well. I'd like to congratulate and thank our mayor for the way he handled himself in that event. Thank you.
So we live in a world where trolls exist. For me, the bar is a bit higher before we take away, I think, a very valuable tool in accessing public comment. I think the engagement numbers on a screen looks small, but we've also been in this room where the seats are empty as well. And I think of all those single comments, all of them brought value to this discussion. But since we're in the question phase, City Clerk, do you have any idea about the verification capabilities of Zoom for the webinar tool?
I haven't really looked into it too deeply, but there's two different ways that you can set up. Obviously the Zoom, you can set it up via a meeting, which has registration and a passcode and things like that. And we could add a passcode because now we don't require a passcode for our webinar, simply because it was just put on the agenda and it was open, and that's the way we've been doing it. But we could, try to work on getting our security a little bit tighter.
So I don't know if this is a feature, but could you look into our ability to ban ISP or ban internet addresses if they've violated or Zoom bombed us for future meetings? And then, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think unfortunately, just because someone's done it in the past doesn't mean you would, if they threatened us or did things that we got some kind of like a restraining order, that's one thing, but I think just doing the Zoom bomb would not warrant banning them from a future meeting.
And then, I guess, to Councilmember Overton's point, if there was a chat method, but a way for us to verify and then create a whitelist from that to then allow folks in through some type of verification method, what is the?
Yeah, so we also can't require, so even though we ask people their name and where they live, that's a voluntary ask. If they don't want to give the name, or if they want to give a fake name and a fake address, there's no way to do that.
True.
So same thing with that. We could have people register and sign up, and they could provide any email address, any fake name they want. But to have a list where we verified that they're real, I think we'd be sketching or touching on the lines of inappropriate.
Thank you. Councilmember Purdock.
Just following up, Mr. Jones, is this kind of an all or nothing thing? We either allow it or we don't?
Well, not necessarily. I think
I'm just looking at the numbers, and it seemed like seems to be what other jurisdictions had done. It either exists and we allow it, or they stop using it.
I think that's correct that other jurisdictions have. I think that doesn't mean you couldn't try to get creative of a chat or a registration. Again, the registration wouldn't require a real name, just something they put out there with an email, and we give them the passcode. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I guess another nuanced question. So public comment would be one forum, then public input during an agenda item. Can we separate the two? That way, if someone goes off the agenda and starts talking about something irrelevant, we can immediately cut them off.
Right, you can do that, yes.
But could we limit Zoom input during public comment, but then leave it open during the agenda items so that if there is input and we have a little bit more control if they go off topic?
I think you could. I think you could, as long as it's very clear on our agenda that's posted that we are not going to have, which one the Zoom is allowed for, which one it's not.
Councilmember Kramer.
In the case last week of the two Zoom bombers, they were speaking on one of the agenda items, and they did mix in things about the agenda items. And then they inserted the inappropriate comments they did. So I don't know how you could sort that out. I still think that Councilman Overton's suggestion on the chat is the best way that we can continue to be able to give people the opportunity that aren't here to submit comments that are appropriate.
Just to clarify, I think that was public comment. I think we had public comment around animal control, and then
It wasn't a specific agenda
Well,
item.
either way, whether it was on the agenda or whether it's public comment, I think it's still, if it went through the chat, rather than just opening it up on Zoom for anybody to speak on any subject, it doesn't make any difference, really.
All right, any other questions before we go to the public? All right, now's the time for public input. If you have any comments here in the chamber, please come up. Seeing none. Oh, seeing some.
Bruno Sabatier, City of Clearlake. I think there's a SB 1100 that could be part of this discussion where you can cut off public comment that has been allowed. I think it's a little sensitive on when to use it. The First Amendment has been brought up. That's definitely a sensitive thing. I think it's the balance between allowing people to I think you guys handled it well, and I think that matters almost more than anything. Just ignored it and moved on, but you said something about it. It's inappropriate. We're not going to have that. I think the reaction is the important part here, and being able to cut them off early once it goes off the rails. So we've discussed this at the county. We have a script ready to say that we have the right for those that are, I forget what the right term is, but an obstacle to the meeting. And of course, there's hate speech, which is also a crime. And I would almost suggest possibly that some of the terms that were used is borderline hate speech in your last meeting. Very uncomfortable to deal with, and I'm sorry you had to go through that. But I think that the access to the meetings, even if it's one person that logs in who's bedbound but wants to yet participate in their local government, makes it so valuable to still have the ability to access that. And again, as long as you keep reacting the way you reacted last time and maybe set up some mechanisms to cut them off early. For example, I have the ability to allow people to talk or not talk from the dais. I have Zoom on there with the full control. I don't usually use it, but with this situation, we've now talked about how it is that I can just go ahead and make a request or just mute them myself. And then again, bring out the script and explain that we have the right to limit that kind of speech because that kind of speech is inappropriate. Difficult conversation, again, wanting to make this place as safe as possible for anyone to come and approach the council and express themselves, but at the same time, the access is absolutely wonderful too, so thank you for the discussion.
Thank you.
Wait a minute, Bruno, or Supervisor Sabatier, what about the ability to use a chat or send in responses that are read, or as Councilwoman Overton has suggested, the chat?
So I've never seen webinar using a chat that hides the chat from everybody. And I think that the webinar that separates everyone, all they see is you and their blank screen. Then when they're allowed to talk, all they have the ability to do is speak until they're muted again. But I think once you turn on the chat, they can put out hate all they want to everybody that's in the Zoom room, and they'll see it, versus, again, just being sent to the clerk. I don't know if those have changed, but I've never experienced that where the chat is solely going to the clerk. Usually everyone can see what's written. And we've all seen chat rooms and comment sections, thinking that that's going to be less of a situation. It's.
I believe Zoom does have a Q&A feature that is masked. So if you ask a question to the presenter, it's then reviewed by the presenter. But we need to confirm.
Well, two things. The city clerk tells me that the majority of the time that we had one person on Zoom, it was actually Supervisor Sabatier. So thank you for coming in person tonight.
I'm always watching.
I mean, I think it does look like there's some options. I'm doing a little of research live here on webinar chat. It does look like it's fairly configurable about who can see it. There's even a chat etiquette tool where you can sort of ban certain words and phrases that would not allow the chat to come through, it looks like. And so, you know, if it's something that the council wants to pursue more, it looks like there may be some options there for us. You know, we would also have to look into whether there's sort of ADA concerns with the chat feature, which might be something that would be a little problematic for us as well.
I've been in meetings where I didn't see the chat. That's the reason why I know that it can happen. Because
We don't have it turned on now, but you can set it up, and whether, just hosts or panelists can see it, or whether all the attendees can see it, and so forth. So, I mean, I'm just doing some quick research here.
I
but-
think AD accessible, they can speak and it will still do write the chat, so I know that's possible for them to do, so.
Any other members of the public that want to comment on this item? Seeing none, let's go to the folks we're talking about. Madam Clerk, anyone with their hands raised on Zoom?
There are no hands raised on
I
Zoom.
don't have a comment about it, there, so I say let's try it.
All right. So bringing it back to the council, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like there are some good suggestions, potential options that we'd like staff to research. City Manager Flora, do you think you need any more direction here?
Well, I mean, I don't know, I guess in the immediate future, you want to continue doing what we're doing and come back with ideas on chat, or do you want to discontinue and see what, try chat next time and see what we can set up, or what would you like to try first?
I would like to try it, because I think, again, it's important that we are as open as possible.
So you're saying try the chat? Is everyone okay with trying the chat at the next meeting?
Do you think that you could have something like that ready by the next meeting? So, I mean.
Yeah, I mean.
I would say.
It appears so. I'll,
I'd be
we'll
much
give it
more
our best
comfortable
shot.
with the chat option than the
I mean, there's gotta be
unlimited Zoom.
solutions to this kind of issue.
there's, yeah.
I think we're unanimous on that.
Okay, all right. Any questions, Ms. Swanson?
I think we have our direction.
Wonderful. Thank you for your research into this, Ms. Swanson. Great job. All right. I believe we are at City Manager report.
I don't really think I have anything to report tonight.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Overton.
I just have really one thing. I went to the COAD meeting that was out at Twin Pines. I've been doing it on, Zoom and stuff, and they really had to have much in person. Nothing really much is going on, but it looks like they're actually trying to get it together. I kind of backed away from it because just nothing was going, and it was kind of I felt like a waste of my time. But they actually are starting to get things going and kicking in here and starting to have groups. So I'm going to be getting more involved in that and trying to help get that going and some training going and, to get more, start doing more participation in that. So I'll look forward to some reports as we go moving that forward. So I see a positive thing now with that and where I didn't see before. So I think we got some good people in charge of some of these groups, and moving forward, I hope it goes the way it looks like it's going to. So that's pretty much all I have to report.
Thank you.
Our kitchen's going wonderful. I guess I could say that. The kitchen part's looking really, really good. If we could get our refrigerator, freezers in there, we might be in there sooner than later. So.
I don't think you get too excited about that.
I know. I've already told them, don't even think about it.
Councilmember Slutin.
I have really nothing to report.
All right, Councilmember Purdock.
I have nothing to report, sir.
I went to the Cal Cities Conference in Monterey. Oh, he wanted to go last.
Go ahead.
I went to the Cal Cities Conference in Monterey for mayors and new council members. A wonderful experience. Got to meet our Cal City rep and have a conversation. Got to meet a lot of city council members from across the region, and there were more meetings planned there. Also had the pleasure of attending the EDC's Restaurant Expo with Councilmember Slutin, a wonderful program that the EDC puts on for restaurateurs and entrepreneurs looking to open something here. Great programming, all leading up to Restaurant Week next week here in Lake County. I hope everyone has a chance to participate in that. Councilmember Kramer.
Well, I was going to say I had nothing to report, but you knew that wasn't going to go. I had actually hoped to go to that restaurant presentation at the college too, but unfortunately I had some private matters that had to be taken care of. I did go to an event put on by Clearlake Environmental Research Center, announcing a collaboration of Clerk, U.S. Forest Service, the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, California Fire Chiefs Association. I think there was one more if I remember. But at any rate, Clerk, if you're not aware of what they are, they're 501c3 that's just celebrated their 10th anniversary. They have been extremely successful at getting grant funding for fire resiliency projects especially. They've gotten grants of $26.6 million in the past, I think, 8 years. And they're out there doing projects. They're working, actually, were yesterday, they funded things like the North Shore Fire Department's Hogback Ridge Crew, which they go around the county, they do chipping operations around, they do brush chipping on lots and on larger, long highway sections. They were out early this week at the Lower Lake Cemetery doing a project, doing a lot of good things, and they have a chipping program which you can actually call in and get on their schedule for. That's just one of the things that they do. They're also working on biomass, biochar projects, pilot programs up in the National Forest, which if successful could be expanded back down into Lake County further. So that was an exciting, I thought, really productive meeting. I'm actually on their board, and that's why one reason I'm excited about it. But they're doing a lot of good things, and I don't know if City Manager Flora got there a little late for it, but I think he did some conversations with you. I don't know if you had any comments or not.
I was sorry to miss the main presentation, but I got to hobnob with all the folks afterwards, and so yeah, there's some exciting stuff happening. So, but I don't have anything really to add.
Great. All right, let's move on to.
Get out of you.
All right, future agenda items. Does anyone have anything?
Nope.
All right. At this point, we'll adjourn to closed session. Thank you, everyone.